The sharp click of the briefcase latch was the only sound in the opulent living room, cutting through the suffocating silence. Alara Vance stood frozen, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, as Julian Thorne turned from the mahogany desk, a cold, unfeeling glint in his eyes. He had once been her world, the man whose laughter filled their home, whose touch sent shivers of delight through her. Now, he was a stranger, meticulously buttoning his expensive suit jacket, a stark symbol of the impenetrable wall he had built between them. "It's done, Alara," he stated, his voice devoid of warmth, a clinical pronouncement. "The divorce is final. The assets are split, as per the agreement." He didn't look at her as he spoke, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the grand bay windows, beyond their manicured garden, beyond the life they had built together. "The house, the cars, the investments, they're all in my name now. As for you, there's a severance package." He gestured vaguely towards a slim envelope resting on the polished surface of the desk. Alara's breath hitched. She knew what that envelope contained. A pittance, a cruel jest compared to the wealth they had accumulated over 15 years of marriage. She, who had poured her heart and soul into his burgeoning tech empire, working tirelessly by his side, sacrificing her own dreams for his ambition. She had been his confidant, his strategist, his muse. And now, she was to be dismissed with a severance package, like a failed employee. "Julian," she whispered, her voice raw. "How could you? After everything, all those years. You promised we'd build an empire, together." Her plea hung in the air, unanswered, absorbed by the silence of the room that had once echoed with their love and laughter. He finally turned to her then, and for a fleeting second, she saw a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. Regret? Shame? Before his gaze hardened into an impenetrable mask. "Promises change, Alara. People change. I've moved on. You should too." With that, he picked up his briefcase, his reflection momentarily distorted in the vast mirror above the fireplace, a shadow of the man she had loved. The front door clicked shut with an almost imperceptible sound, yet it reverberated through Alara's very being like a thunderclap. He was gone, just like that, leaving her in the cavernous house, a hollow shell of their shared dreams, with nothing but a paltry sum and the crushing weight of betrayal. The ensuing weeks were a blur of despair and disbelief. The severance package barely covered a few months' rent in a tiny, run-down apartment in the city's periphery. Her once vibrant world, filled with lavish dinners, international travel, and the comforting hum of shared success, had disintegrated into a stark landscape of hand-to-mouth existence. Every rejection from potential employers, every condescending glance from former acquaintances, chipped away at her already fractured self-worth. The bitterness gnawed at her, a constant, acidic reminder of Julian's betrayal. She felt exposed, vulnerable, stripped bare not just of her financial security, but of her identity as Julian Thorne's wife, a role that had unknowingly defined her for so long. The glittering life she once knew now seemed like a mirage, mocking her from a distance. But amidst the overwhelming despair, a tiny ember of defiance began to glow. She wouldn't let him break her. She wouldn't become the penniless, broken woman he expected her to be. She would survive, no matter the cost. This wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming her dignity. This was about proving him wrong. And as the meager contents of the envelope scattered across her small, worn kitchen table, a steely resolve settled in her heart, cold and sharp as a winter wind. Years bled into each other, each one a testament to Alara's quiet, relentless will. The tiny apartment became her sanctuary, a stark contrast to the sprawling mansion she had once called home. She picked up odd jobs, anything to keep a roof over her head and food on her table. She cleaned houses, waited tables, even took on freelance editing work late into the nights, her eyes burning with fatigue, but her spirit unyielding. Every scraped-together dollar was a small victory, a defiant middle finger to the man who had tried to erase her. The bitterness towards Julian never truly faded, but it transformed, hardening into a steely resilience that fueled her every effort. One sweltering summer evening, a faded flyer tacked to a community board caught her eye. Legal aid clinic, seeking administrative assistant. It wasn't glamorous, but it offered stability and, more importantly, a chance to be part of something meaningful. The clinic specialized in pro bono cases for the underserved, a world away from Julian's cutthroat corporate sphere. Alara, with her sharp mind and meticulous organizational skills honed during her years supporting Julian's empire, quickly proved invaluable. She wasn't just an assistant. She was the quiet backbone of the clinic, often working late, researching cases, comforting clients, and learning the intricate dance of the justice system from the ground up. Her mentor at the clinic was Sarah Jenkins, a formidable lawyer with a kind heart and an unwavering belief in justice. Sarah saw beyond Alara's quiet demeanor, recognizing the intelligence and untapped potential beneath the surface. "You have a natural legal mind, Alara," Sarah would often say, encouraging her to attend night classes at the local community college, then later to pursue a paralegal certificate. Alara devoured every textbook, every case study, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a growing sense of purpose. The law, she discovered, was not just about rules and regulations. It was about stories, about people, about finding a voice for the voiceless. It was a stark contrast to Julian's world, where numbers and profits eclipsed humanity. It was this newfound path that led her, years later, into the sterile, hushed grandeur of the district courthouse. She was there supporting a young client, a single mother fighting an unfair eviction. Alara felt a familiar knot of nerves in her stomach as they waited for the judge to enter, but it was a professional anxiety, tempered by her preparedness and Sarah's reassuring presence beside her. The doors to the chambers swung open, and the bailiff's voice boomed. "All rise." Alara rose with the rest, her gaze instinctively drawn to the figure entering the room. He walked with a familiar, confident stride, his dark robes flowing around him, lending him an air of austere authority. As he ascended the bench and settled into his imposing seat, his eyes swept over the courtroom. And then, their gazes locked. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The air thickened, the hushed murmur of the courtroom fading into an echoing silence in Alara's ears. It was Julian. Older, yes, with distinguished silver at his temples, but undeniably Julian. His expression, initially one of detached judicial solemnity, morphed into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and his eyes, once so cold, now held a flicker of something akin to disbelief, perhaps even alarm. Alara felt a sudden, dizzying rush of adrenaline mixed with a chilling sense of dread. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel, twisted sense of humor. The man who had stripped her bare, who had left her to fend for herself, was now sitting in judgment, not just over her client, but over her very presence in this room. The bitter irony was a punch to the gut. The courtroom, once a symbol of impartial justice, suddenly felt like a stage set for an unbelievable, agonizing confrontation. The initial shock in Julian's eyes was quickly replaced by an unreadable mask of judicial neutrality, a practiced facade Alara knew all too well. He cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping past her to the young mother, then to Sarah Jenkins, as if willing Alara's presence into non-existence. But Alara felt his eyes, a phantom weight on her skin, throughout the morning's proceedings. Every legal argument, every witness testimony, felt like a scene in a surreal play. Her internal struggle was a tempest. The professional Alara, focused on her client's desperate plight, warring with the personal Alara, drowning in a tidal wave of past hurt and present indignation. When it was time for the plaintiff's lawyer, a sharp, unyielding man, to cross-examine Alara's client, the tension in the courtroom became palpable. The questions were relentless, designed to expose cracks in the young mother's story, to paint her as irresponsible. Alara felt a surge of familiar fury. This was the Julian Thorne she knew, a system, a mindset that prioritized profit and legality over human dignity. She caught Julian's eye again, a fleeting connection that lasted only a fraction of a second, but in that instant, she saw a flicker, a subtle shift in his otherwise impassive expression. Was it empathy, or merely professional scrutiny? During a brief recess, Julian called both legal teams to his chambers. Alara remained outside, her heart pounding. Sarah emerged a few minutes later, a strange, thoughtful look on her face. "He's different, Alara," she murmured, almost to herself. He listened, really listened, suggested we explore mediation before returning to court, citing the best interests of the child. The mediation process was agonizing. Alara sat across the table from Julian, separated by a mediator, but their shared history was a silent, thrumming presence in the room. He maintained his judicial decorum, asking pointed questions, analyzing facts, but Alara noticed the subtle cues, a lingering glance when her client spoke of her struggles, a slight furrow of his brow when discussing the eviction's impact on the child. It was a Julian she hadn't seen in years, a shadow of the compassionate man she had once loved, buried deep beneath layers of ambition and detachment. The turning point came when the young mother, desperate and tearful, recounted a specific detail about her eviction notice, a legal technicality that seemed minor but, to Alara, echoed a tactic Julian himself had used in his early business dealings. She saw his eyes narrow, a jolt of recognition passing through him. He leaned forward, not as a judge, but as someone who understood the precise mechanism of that cruelty. In that moment, Alara realized this wasn't just about her client. It was about Julian confronting a reflection of his past self. He paused the mediation, requesting a private word with Alara. "Alara," he began, his voice softer than she'd heard it in years. I remember that tactic. It was ruthless." He looked at her, truly looked at her, and the mask finally fell away. "What I did to you, what I became, it was a mistake. A colossal one. I lost myself in the pursuit of more, and I lost you too." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken regret. He admitted to seeing his own past actions in the injustice faced by her client, a painful mirror reflecting his own callousness. The mediation concluded not with a judge's ruling, but with a surprising resolution. Julian, acting within the bounds of his judicial authority to encourage settlement, pushed for a more equitable outcome for the young mother than anyone had dared hope. It was a compromise, yes, but one that ensured the mother and child would have stable housing and a path forward. He didn't explicitly apologize for their past in front of everyone, but his actions, his quiet insistence on fairness, spoke volumes. As Alara walked out of the courthouse, the city air felt lighter, the burden she'd carried for so long subtly eased. She hadn't received an explicit apology for being left penniless, but Julian's actions in that courtroom, the way he had acknowledged the subtle cruelty of the legal system and worked towards a more just outcome, felt like a silent, profound confession of remorse. It wasn't about rekindling a relationship, nor was it a perfect happy ending. But seeing Julian, the man who had inflicted so much pain, use his power to rectify a similar injustice, offered a different kind of resolution. It was the bittersweet victory of seeing growth, a testament to the fact that even in the most unbelievable trials, justice, and perhaps a measure of healing, could be found. Alara knew her journey was far from over, but the echo of shattered dreams had finally begun to fade, replaced by the quiet strength of her own resilience. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel and enjoy these other amazing stories.